Okay, as promised, here is virtual Miss Goff doing the homework and practice with you, and I am starting in Module 13, Lesson 1 on page 611. So I think we'll go ahead and talk through several of these, and then you'll see kind of periodically I'll put my answers up. But I am going to encourage you to actually pause the video when there's an opportunity, work the problem before you just see me show you the answers, okay? So let's first go to number 2. The equation 2 equals 1.01 to the x models a population that has doubled. What is the rate of increase? Well, first of all, I want you to notice that 2 is twice the y-intercept, the number that you start with. Remember, this is like f of x equals, remember that a b to the x, where your a is your value at time equals 0 or before, your value when x is 0, okay? So really, I could do this as long as I have a number here that's double what the a number is, okay? What's the rate of increase? Well, if in here it was exactly 1.00, then it's not increasing and it's not decreasing. So really, you just look at how much above 1.00 is it, and that's your rate of increase. So your rate of increase is 1%, okay? If here, let's say that the population was falling instead of, maybe it's going to wind up being half over here, right here, instead of doubling. If it was decreasing by 1%, then in here it would be 0.99, okay? So basically, if it's increasing by 1%, it's 1 plus 0.01. If it's decreasing by 1%, it would be 1 minus 0.01. Hope you get that. Okay, what does x represent? It just represents the number of time units. If we were talking about looking at the population in terms of the number of years that go by, then x would be years. If it was a population that doubled in a certain number of months, well, then x would represent months or whatever. It's just the unit of time, okay? Can we solve equations using both algebraic and graphical methods? Yes. But sometimes, as you have maybe seen in some of the examples, the numbers aren't quite so pretty when we try to do it algebraically and we don't get whole number answers. And then we try to start, dealing with exponents that aren't whole numbers and stuff either. So sometimes, yes, and then sometimes it's just easier to graph it. Okay. All right. So let's start down here with some actual problems. And I'm going to start with number 4. And the first thing I'm hoping that you will realize is that, okay, it's 2 to the x times 4, okay? If I will divide both sides by 4, then I can simplify things. That's going to be 2. I can keep it in parentheses if I want to, but I don't really need to at this point. 2 to the x is equal to, well, 64 divided by 4 is 16. And this is one of those cases where a little thinking or a little bit of looking at that little chart that I gave you, 2 to the something power is 16. So x equals, drum roll please. Okay. 2 raised to the 4th power is 16. So that exponent of x has to be 4. Okay. I would like you to try number 5. Think about the first step that we did over here. You probably want to do a similar first step over here. Over here, there's an important first step, but it's not dividing. It's the opposite of dividing. So pause for a minute and see if you can work 5 and 6, and then we'll quickly go through there. All right, after I divide both sides by 7, I'm going to get 3 raised to the x power is equal to, well, 63 divided by 7 is 9. 3 raised to what power is 9? Well, I'm hoping that you remember 3 squared is 9. So my exponent, x, is 2, because 3 squared is 9. Over here, I'm hoping that you realize that the first step you need to do is multiply both sides by 4, like so. 54 times 4, I think that's 216. Because 4 times 50 is 200, and then 4 times 4 is 16, so 200 plus 16. 216, yay! Okay, so 216 is 6 to the x. All right, once again, I'm looking down, and boom, here we go. 216, 6 to the third power, sorry about that. 6 to the third power is 16. So my x, my exponent, is a 3. Okay, take a look at number 8. Please be careful. 7 over 2, that whole thing is in parentheses raised to the x power. But this number outside the parentheses, I can go ahead and divide this whole side by 2 and this whole side by 2, and I get 7 halves raised to the x power is equal to 49 halves divided by 2. Guys, dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. Okay, so when it's all said and done, over here, I really have 49 over 4, and that is equal to 7 over 2 to some power. Okay, and then I'm hoping that a little more looking, and you start to clue in, hey, 7 squared is 49, and 2 squared is 4. So 7 over 2 squared is 49 over 4, and so that x is going to be a squared. Okay? Ooh, handwriting. Yuck. All right, join me on the next page. Okay, we're going to do 10 and 11. What I want you to do is pause for just a second. See if you can work through this problem. Remember, over here, you can simplify by dividing by 2, but you also have to do that right here. Here, you can simplify this whole side by dividing by 2, but over here, you also have to divide by 2. Remember that dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying it by 1/2. Okay, so pause, see what you get. All right, so on number 10, divide both sides by 2, and what you wind up with is 9 raised to the x power equals 81. I left the parentheses, but obviously there's nothing else over on that side, so I really don't need the parentheses, but you know, at least in this case, I don't need the parentheses. Okay, so a little thinking. I'm hoping that you remember multiplication stuff or your chart well enough to know that 9 raised to the second power, or 9 squared, gives you 81. So your x is a 2, because 9 to the second power, 9 squared, is 81. Okay. Over here, divided both sides by 2, and I get 1 over 9 raised to the x power equals 2 over 81 times 1/2, because remember, times 1/2 is the same as multiplying by 2. Well, look here. Boom, boom. When that simplifies, I have 1/9 to the x power. Here, the parentheses are a little more important because you don't want to make it look like only the 1 on the top is raised to the x power. So keep it in parentheses. Equals, now we simplify everything, 1 to the 81st, or 1 over 81, excuse me. So 1/9 to some power equals 1 over 81. Well, I know that 1 squared is 1, and I know that 9 squared is 81. So 1/9 times 1/9 equals 1 over 81. And again, your x is a squared. Okay.